All right, guys, I'm Robert, and I'd like to welcome you down to the Apex reception. Today I have a prop in front of us, and maybe this prop is going to indicate what we are, but this is a GT2RS rear magnesium wheel with a Cup 2R mounted on top of it. Why did I take this tire? It's the biggest tire we run. It's a 325 in a 21 inch, so it gives us nice surface area for me to do things like this and this with it. So what are we talking about? Tire pressures. We did a video recently where I spoke with you about the 7 tires that we run at Apex on our different cars in the fleet. And a lot of topics were, Robert, what tire pressure should I run? Well, what car do you have? What does it weigh? What tire is it? There's so many variables and so many factors that we could get into that, again, like a lot of topics, this is going to have to be an intro into tire pressures. And then maybe you guys can make some comments below and tell us what you think, what questions you might have, and then we can divulge into those into their own separate videos. But the thing to keep in mind with tire pressures is that not only is the type of tire that's on the car going to play a factor in the tire pressure, but what type of car is it? Is it a front wheel drive? Is it a rear wheel drive? Is it all wheel drive? Is it a front engine, mid engine, rear engine? These are all factors that are going to play into the whole tire pressure scenario. If I were to take and put, let's say, a tire NS2R, like what we run on our Seat Leon Cupra, which is a front wheel drive car. It's essentially a front wheel drive Golf R with maybe 40 more horsepower or something like that. But it's a very capable car. And on that car, we have a front engine front wheel drive. And in this application, because there's more weight on the front end, there's more load on the front end, we're going to actually run a higher pressure in the front than we are in the back. So hot pressures on, let's say, NS2R, I'm probably running about 2.5 in the front, maybe 2.45. And then in the rear, I'm going to actually run about 2.25 to 2.3. And I'm going to probably base that depending on how I feel the car is working. And you're going to start to develop a feel for different tire pressures. So you can see that in a front wheel drive car, or I should say a front wheel drive and front engine car, we have more weight on the front wheels, and that means that we're going to run a higher pressure in the front. Then we're going to go to something like the GT2RS, which is the other extreme, or GT3RS, and that's a rear engine car where we have a bulk of our weight in the back of the car. And with the bulk of the weight in the back of the car, that means we've got more pressure on the back wheels, and we're going to actually run a higher pressure in the back. So when we're running the Cup 2, the normal Cup 2 on the GT2RS will actually run 2.3 to 2.35 in the back and 2.1 bar in the front. 2.1 bar seems pretty low, but you have to realize that most of the weight is in the back of the car. The front of the car is doing the steering, the back is carrying the weight, and it's also putting the power to the ground. So you can see that the balance of your car will make the change. Something like the Pista or the 675 LT, which you may or may not see back there in the corner, I will actually run those with a completely square tire pressure. I really enjoy the Pista being at about 2.1 bar on a hot semi-slick like a Nankang AR1 that it's sitting on right now. I find that 2.1 bar to be a very, very good tire pressure for that car, maybe 2.15. And then when I'm running the Trofeo R on the 675, I'm actually going warm 2.0 bar. It seems like a low tire pressure, but you have to keep in mind it's a very light car in terms of the cars that I'm discussing. It weighs around 1,270 kilograms. And with that being said, it's a car that doesn't need a lot of tire pressure. Now, what is the most simple way that I can talk to you about what tire pressure is doing in your tire when you're increasing and decreasing the pressure? Obviously, we have a sidewall. In our tire video, we talked about some tires have a stiffer sidewall, some tires have a softer sidewall. The first thing I'm going to talk about is the sidewall is supposed to be standing straight up like this. If you run too low of tire pressure, there was a post on Facebook that I saw the other day, and somebody was running a certain tire. It was a street tire, Pirelli P0 is what it was, and they were out on track with, I think, 2.1 bar of tire pressure, and they posted a picture, and their tire, when they were in the turn, was leaned completely over like this, and the rim was popping out the side. And I said, you're running too low of tire pressure. The tire is not working correctly because when you have too low of tire pressure, you're not supporting the sidewalls anymore, and the sidewalls are able to move like this very, very heavily. And that's a very quick sign, one of very quick signs that your tire pressures are low. A Pirelli Trofeo R also has a softer sidewall, so it does need a little bit more support. And that's where with the 675 LT, me running 2 bar is right on that critical edge of this sidewall starting to flex and move around. What ends up happening is I've got the rim underneath and I have the tire here, and right now both center points are lined up. If I'm running too low of tire pressure, the entire carcass here actually moves left to right and the wheel stays in place. And you can imagine that if I'm getting a centimeter or two of movement, that's at turn in, that's at mid corner, the car starts working and kind of moving around, and that's not really a pleasant feel when the front's moving at a different rate than the back and things are starting to happen. That doesn't give you the best feel for the tire. So you can also feel that starting to happen. So that's when you have too low of tire pressure, the sidewalls will definitely move back and forth. The next thing that will happen with too low of tire pressure is you will actually start to put a very heavy load on your sidewall. A downward force can get applied to the sidewall, because the sidewall is now trying to carry all of the weight of the car, because there's not enough air in the middle of the tire for the middle of the tire to be doing anything. So that sidewall ends up carrying a brunt of the load and will start unevenly wearing the outsides or even damaging the sidewall because there's too much pressure on there. So let's imagine that we have a tire like the Dunlop Durezza with a very stiff sidewall. That tire is known that if you run it well below 2 bar, that it will, and you drive it anywhere, it'll put pressure on this sidewall right here, and eventually it'll break the sidewall once you pump it back up and you start going high speed, it'll actually blow the sidewall apart. It's not really a defect in the tire, it's just the simple fact that tire pressure is something that you need to maintain. You don't drive your car without fuel, you shouldn't drive your car without air pressure. That's very important. So, basic fundamentals. Pressure protects your sidewalls, and it also is what lets you get an even surface or an even contact patch along your tire. If I have too little tire pressure, I will have contact patch on the 2 outside treads right here, or the 2 outer ends of the tread, and the bottom will belly in, and I won't be using the center of the tire. So when I'm going around the turn, my tire is moving in and out, and then my tire is only really making contact on the 2 outsides where the sidewall is the stiffest and making the most pressure. The whole inside is going to be unused, okay? And that's not going to be very efficient. Now let's talk about if I were to correct that and I go up maybe a full bar, full 14 PSI, and I pump this bad boy up, now I'm making a balloon. And all of a sudden my sidewalls aren't doing anything and I'm running on the center part of the tire. Well, obviously now I've completely compromised my contact patch, because the outside of the wheels are not doing anything for me anymore, the outside of the tires, and I'm only working on the middle. My sidewalls, they're not moving anymore. I'm way over pressured, everything's nice and solid, but I'm working only in the middle section of the tire, and that's not ideal. So what we have to do is we have to find that balance. Where's that balance that we have a nice even contact patch? When you get good with a car and you drive a car a lot and you have a very good feel for it, you're going to start to feel in how the tire performs when I'm loaded up in the corner. Am I getting the full contact patch or not? And you're going to feel that simply based on the feedback through the steering wheel. You're going to feel it in the seat of the pants, and when the car starts going into a slip angle, you're going to know, am I getting all of the grip that this car should provide based on the tires that I have on it and then maybe the laps I've done before. Another way that a lot of people will check their tire pressures is they'll go across and they'll take a temperature reading here, here, and here. And if their temperature reading is similar all the way across, then they'll know, okay, I have a nice even tire pressure because I'm getting a nice even tire reading or temperature reading. Things that can throw that off could be a bad alignment. Maybe you've got something going on that you're wearing the inside too much, and that's overheating the inside. So that can also cause problems. But as a whole, when you have a good alignment and everything's working, your tire pressures are going to be consistent. Another thing that you can look at to see if your tire pressures are good is the simple fact of the wear all the way across the tire. Of course, with a car with camber, you're going to wear your inside line here a little bit faster. But from this point to this point, if you've got a nice even wear pattern, your tire pressures are probably good. If you're noticing that you're wearing out the center of the tire extremely fast, you probably have too high of pressure. If you notice your 2 outsides both are worn down and the middle's looking brand new, you're probably running too low of tire pressure. Some things that you have to keep in mind are that friction is what's causing the temperature. Whether you're accelerating, driving straight, turning, braking, all of that is creating friction, and that's what's causing the rubber to heat up. Air expands when it's hotter. Somebody asked me before when I did an M3 video talking about warming up your tires, I said, well, why don't you start with a higher pressure and keep it in your range longer? Well, the thing is that tires heat is the enemy of, or overheating is the enemy of a tire, and could be its best friend at the same time. A cold tire, the compound is not going to have as much grip. When the tire warms up, the compound actually gets looser, and it gets to the point where it starts digging into the road and gripping the road. So you need that initial heat, and you need to get it to a temperature that's working. Once you go beyond that, the tire starts to get greasy and it starts to slide around, and that's when a tire is overheated. A lot of times a tire will overheat. One, because of poor driving technique, you're turning in too early, you're understeering through the entire turn, and things just start to get mushy because the tire starts to get greasy, as we call it, and starts moving around. The second reason that a tire will overheat is because you've got too much pressure in it. Air, when it gets hotter, expands, okay? And as that air expands, it starts to build up pressure. So let's say that I take this tire right here, and I go out with this rear tire and I start at 2.4 bar. This is about what's recommended for this tire as a cold pressure, and 2.5 is recommended as a hot pressure, so it's very finicky. You have to build it up very safely. And I go out and I start with 2.4 bar. By the time I get back from one lap, this tire is at 3 bar. So what we do is we go out and we get after it, and we do our heating up in the braking zones. And we really do a lot of braking and heat this tire up. And as this tire heats up 2.4, 2.5, all the way up to 3 bar, by that point, we're taking it easy on the tire, but keeping heat in it. So I might be going, straight down the straightaways, not full throttle and things like that, putting a lot of load on the middle of the tire because it's entirely too hot, still taking some good corner speed. Then we get in and we drop the tire pressures. As we drop the tire pressures, we've just let out 0.6 bar to get it from 3 back down to our 2.4 number. We've let out 0.6 bar out of this tire. Well, once we've done that, we now have to go out again and maybe do a second warm-up lap. And in that second warm-up lap, maybe we'll go from 2.4 up to 2.6 or 2.7. So every little bit more temperature we get in the tire, the higher the pressure goes, okay? A lot of people ask, why not use nitrogen? Why not do this? And the reason is that it's just too inconvenient. We have too many cars, we have too much going on to use nitrogen. And the reason that people will use nitrogen often is because it's because of moisture. Nitrogen is generally a dry gas, and it has less moisture in it. And the outside air here, just about anywhere, has obviously a good bit of moisture in it. So when you go on a very humid day and you pump up your tires, and then the outside air, maybe you're then driving on a dry day, you're going to have more finicky tires. Your pressures are going to be going up and down, and they're not going to be as controllable. So with that being the case, you end up getting this expansion of the tire, and that's basically has a lot to do with the humidity of the air that's in your tire. So when you're out and you're driving and your pressures start rising, you need to start bleeding the air off. You need to start bleeding the air off. Each car is going to have a different setup. Each tire combination is going to be at a different point. We run on, like I said, the Pista somewhere around 2.1 bar, on the 675 LT 2.0 bar, on the GT3 RS in the front 2.1 and 2.3 when we're running the Cup 2, 2.1 and 2.45 to 2.5 when we're running the Cup 2R. When I'm running something heavier, why would I run more pressure when I'm running something heavier? A heavier car is going to put more pressure on the sidewalls because it's got more weight. So we're going to compensate by putting more air in the tire to bring up the center of the tire to balance it out all the way across. So if I've got a very heavy front axle, then I'm going to put more pressure on the front axle, and I'm going to put less pressure in the rear axle, because on the rear axle I have less weight pushing on the sidewalls, so I need less counterforce in the middle to balance it out. And that would be the best way that I could describe to think about your car. As a rule of thumb, the lighter the car, the less pressure you need. The heavier the car, the more pressure you need. That's probably the most simple way you can do it. Semi-slicks with stiff sidewalls and a stiffer construction, they're designed to work with a lower tire pressure. Road tires like Michelin Pilot Sport 4S will run sometimes a half bar higher tire pressure in that, because it does have a softer sidewall, and the construction is designed that the sidewalls need support, quite a bit of support from the air pressure as well as the center. So there's a lot of factors that we can get into, a lot of different things that we can talk about. When sometimes people will come in and say, oh, I think I've got a bushing going out in my car. And I say, well, why is that? Well, because when I'm on the gas, it goes this way, and when I'm off the gas, it goes that way. Well, that can also be a function of tire pressure. A tire that has more air in it has a larger circumference than a tire that has less air in it. If one tire has let's say 1.5 bar and the other tire has 2 bar, and you get on it and you accelerate, one tire is going to move faster than the other, and then when you get off the gas, you're going to have kind of a counter effect. So things like that can also play into how your car is driving, so tire pressure is very important. One final thing I'm going to leave you with, and that we see that a lot here at Apex when our cars are sitting outside: what does the outside air temperature have to do? What does sunlight have to do with your tire pressure? When I've got a car sitting here and the sun is shining from the camera, this tire is sitting in the sun and this tire is sitting in the shade, okay? I've seen instances where that has produced a half a bar, which is about 7 PSI difference from a car sitting in the sun, two wheels sitting in the sun to two wheels sitting in the shade. If I know that I want to go out with 2.0 bar, I can't go around the whole car and set the entire car at 2 bar. I have to say, well, wait a minute, this side's sitting in the sun, this side's sitting in the shade. I need to know that I parked my car with even tire pressures, and if both sides are in the sun, I need to compensate for that, because if I drop the entire thing down to an even 2 bar and the tires that are sitting in the sun have more temperature in them, when I get on the track, these ones are going to end up being lower pressure than the ones on the right, because they're both going to come up to the same temperature as I'm driving, and all of a sudden my side that was in the shade is going to be way over pressure, and my car is going to be working in a really funny way. So there's a lot of things like that that you need to think about and keep in mind when you're going. Lastly, when you're done driving, because you've been bleeding all of this air out of the car, out of your tires as you've been driving, you need to pump them back up. You can't just go drive home and get back on the road and slowly see your tire pressures dropping. There's so many things that I didn't talk about in this video that are on my mind that maybe we can go into in round 2. Topics like when you come off the track, your brakes are hot, and those are going to heat up your wheels and actually start to increase your tire pressures as you're coming into the car park. So a lot of people will actually let too much air out of their tires because their brakes are literally red hot. Things like as the sun starts going down and the track temperatures start cooling, you're actually going to start losing pressure in your tires, so you need to fill them up as you go. But why don't you guys drop some comments? Maybe this triggered some ideas for you guys and some questions that you may have, and I'm happy to do a tire pressure tech talk round 2. So I hope you guys enjoyed a little intro into tire pressures, and we'll see you guys in the next one. You like that?